Hey guys, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. It is a new week. My Frostgrave project is complete and I'm rewarding myself by jumping into doing something more simple. Today I'm going to build something and it's going to be easier. And it's going to be something that is self-contained. It's not going to span weeks. It's not going to span days. I'm actually going to try to do it all in one day, but maybe it'll take two. And I'm going to jump back into the world of Dungeons and Dragons and make something for my home game. Speaking of my home game of Dungeons and Dragons, I must admit that that is a game that has been struggling. There's been issues with scheduling, but mostly I've been having issues as a DM, as a crafting DM. I have to admit, I've lost my mojo. For years, I've been running a game that was a game that I put a lot of effort into with the story, the terrain, the atmosphere, and all of a sudden, I've just lost my motivation to do so. I've lost my ability to create dynamic stories. I've been in a writer's block, and since I haven't been motivated as a storyteller, that means that I've struggled just as a DM in general and struggled as a crafter. It all is related. Now, I don't want to delve too much into that issue here because overanalyzing games of D&D is really something better left for the talking heads sitting in front of green screens. I like to make stuff. I will say though that with this kind of creative slump, I've moved away from writing my own story and jumped into using modules. And this has not entirely corrected the problem because at the end of the day, I'm not the kind of person that works well from a module, but it has allowed me to take some of the brain effort of crafting a story out of the equation and just focus on running the game. So I started running White Plume Mountain out of Tales from Yawning Portal. It's a classic module, an old school module, dungeon dive, and I thought it would be really fun and simple to run it. Last session was our first game, and this weekend we're going to play our second session. And what I did when running this module last week was I allowed myself to take a break from being an elaborate crafting DM. I just used a battle mat and some minis, a tiny bit of terrain. Most of it was theater of the mind and a bit of scribbling drawings. As a matter of fact, I even ended up using a dry erase eraser as a prop. It was my Sphinx for this game because there's a Sphinx in the beginning. So even with a room full of stuff, it's still okay to just use random crap as your terrain. Despite keeping things simple and allowing myself to not overdo it with terrain in this little adventure, I do want to build something for it for this coming game. And I have a feeling that the party is going to end up in this room here, room number 7. I won't say too much about it because of spoilers and all that jazz. But what it comes down to is there is a room that is filled with geysers, and there are these wooden disc platforms that are suspended from the ceiling on chain. It's just a classic skill check room. Players have to jump as these things move and sway and get blasted with air. I think I'm going to make these. Still going to use my battle mat for the game, but I'd like to, maybe I'll use tiles. I don't know. Maybe I'll use some cave tiles, whatever. I want to make these wood platforms. They're a fun project. I think it'll make this skills challenge more interesting actually to have it on the table. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make some coffee stir stick circles, use some chain to make the chain, and I'll probably just seat them on some plastic glasses or flight stands or something. But I got to start with the circles. Let's do that. My first thought doing this was to use coffee stir sticks. They could be beveled and made to look like wood grain, and I could make these wood discs out of these. In order to do that, I would need some sort of circular surface for them to attach to. I didn't want to just try to glue these together. So I looked through my stuff and I found these discs that are just MDF circles. These are something that I got from my friend Hobie Hill, who runs a company called Deep Dungeon Games. Put a link below if you want to check it out. He makes all sort of MDF woodcut stuff, also some gaming accessories, some plastic spell templates, all sorts of cool things. Not a sponsor, just a friend. He at one point sent me a big bag of just like offcuts from the stuff that he makes. And some of those things were circular discs. And these are fantastic. This disc is about the perfect size according to the map in the book. And it would be big enough that with a chain in the middle, a mini could sit on it. Would have been perfect just to use these glued directly on. The problem is that I only had 6 of these and the module calls for 9, and I want to honor that, so I didn't have enough. So instead I just used it as a template, and I cut out all these circles from medium weight chipboard, which is not as good, but it will work. While doing this, I started to wonder if I really wanted to use the stir sticks, because they take a fair bit of time to cut, shape, and make look like believable wood. It's actually faster and easier for me to make foam look like wood than wood look like wood, which is kind of ironic. And because I have these discs that are fairly rigid and solid, I can get away with using foam. So I think I'm gonna ditch the coffee stir stick idea, and I'm gonna mill up some foam to create wood planks, and then I'm just gonna glue them to these. All right, all my raw foam is milled up and textured to be like wood grain. The wire brush on foam creates a fantastic wood grain that's gonna look more like wood than had I used actual wood. Now I gotta attach these to my discs, but first of all, I gotta cut these a little bit more because I don't want the planks this wide or this straight. I want them to be narrower with some variation in the edges. I just cut them at this size because that's the thickness of the foam and it allowed me to texture it more easily. So I'm gonna cut these up and hot glue them to these discs. I'm gonna use hot glue for this rather than PVA glue or tacky glue because I don't wanna risk these warping. Although they probably won't be in circles of this size, the hot glue is just gonna be a little bit safer to use. All done. And that was refreshingly easy and quick to do. I estimated my strips perfectly, only leaving 1 to spare, which is exactly what I wanted to do, and that's always nice. The technique of cutting the planks, cutting the edges and the center with a freehand kind of wavy cut adds a lot to the looks of these. It's a simple little thing that makes a big difference in making these look believable like rough planks. Before I paint these, I do have to deal with one issue. There is this edge here where you see the chipboard, and I don't really like that. Realistically, because this project is a kind of quick build meant for one session of gaming and might get thrown away after, I should probably just leave it, but I can fix it really quickly. I'm just gonna cut some more very thin strips of foam and do a cladding around the edge. And then when I paint these, I'll paint the bottom and the edge to look like metal. So it'll look like metal discs with wood planks on top, which is actually kind of how it looks in the book here. The undersides of these look like steel, whereas the tops on the map look like wood planks. And I think it's described as wood planks. So I think it's in theme and it's gonna work. It'll probably just take me, I don't know, 15 minutes or so to rip off some material and glue it on. I don't have to put wood grain on it. So that's what I'm gonna do before jumping onto Mod Podge. Efficiency while building is important, especially when you want to get projects going quickly. So while this brown base coat dries, I'm going to start thinking about and working on the chain. I want these to have little lengths of chain standing up, maybe 2 inches, to give the impression that it's hanging from the ceiling. Luckily, on my last trip to Michael's, I bought a roll of this chain. It's this very small chain that is a great scale for this type of stuff. I got a big roll of it, but I need a way to make this loose chain actually stand upright. So I think what I'm gonna do, and I hope this works, is I'm gonna take a long length of this chain, I'm gonna stretch it out somehow, and I'm gonna put super glue over all the joints, and then I'm gonna spray it with some of this super glue accelerant. This stuff is fantastic. I worked far too long without it. If I get super glue across all the joints, I spray it with this zip kicker. I think it's going to create a stiff chain, and then I can cut it into segments and put them on these boards. So let's see if this works. Wood discs are all painted up. Now it's time to attach this chain, and it didn't work quite as well as I had hoped. We're gonna go with it anyway, and I'll see if I have to do more to make it more sturdy. My idea here is that I'm going to use these jewelry hoop things that I have in my collection. I'm going to glue those in place here and use that for the chain. How am I going to do this? There we go. These look pretty decent, but the one problem doing the super glue is that it created all this kind of white filler kind of material that doesn't look so good, and even the raw metal of the chain doesn't look that great in comparison to this. It kind of stands out. So the last thing I'm going to do on this is just quickly paint out all of this chain and this hook with a gunmetal gray to blend it all together and hide all that kind of white chunky stuff from the super glue. A small change that's probably not highly visible on video, but it does make a considerable difference to making these pieces look cohesive. And that's it. Now I just got to find some stands to put these on. That'll do. I think it's safe to say that this little one-day build project turned out pretty successfully. I was able to replicate the idea and the theme from within the module in a way that actually really worked on the game table, and I used it in my game that following weekend to great effect. Although I must say that this part of the module was considerably more challenging for my party than I expected. If you want to pick up any tools or supplies to do your own builds, head over to blackmagicraft.ca. There I have my essential equipment store with links to all of the stuff that I use and recommend. That way you know you're buying the right stuff for the job, and it also helps support the channel in the process. Another great way you can really help me out and support this channel is by joining Blackmagic Craft on Patreon. It's the funds from people there that allow me to dedicate so much time and effort into making videos like this one. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you again next week. Cheers.